Okay, before we get started, I have to address something. Because I wrote an article, and it appears to have made some people mad. And I'm not talking about the left, per se. I'm talking about my own readers. Look at this. Look at this. How unprofessional. How unprofessional. So I was going to address something that I saw earlier today because we've got colleges coming back with all this pro-communism stuff. You've got the battle for free speech happening, which is what we're going to address today, by the way. But I was like, here's the reason that despite all the pushing for communism that's happening, it will never work. Communism will never, ever, ever work. You know, and there are people out there who have way bigger brains than me who can tell you exactly like the economic reasons why it would never work. They can throw numbers and figures at you all day. But I just cut through the crap because I'm just like, no, it's not necessarily just economic reasons it would never work. We're just the wrong species. Humanity and communism do not mix. We just don't. And I made the comparison of saying, like, not necessarily comparison. It's an honest to God truth. I said, y'all, we can't do it because we're practically advanced apes. We're not a hive mind. We're not like ants or bees. We are advanced apes. And we have every, like if you think about it, we're territorial. We form tribes. We have alphas. The male of our species has a very high concern with acquiring resources so that he can have the best mating options. The women of our species want competent men, strong men, healthy men, so that their offspring will not only be safe, but be healthy as well. Like, we are, when you come down to it, very advanced apes. And I said that in a way that I was trying to make it clear. Like, I was talking about the scientific category that we fall into, because we are considered by science to be a member of the great apes. We're one of them, scientifically speaking. And people automatically were like, we're not great apes. We're not great apes. Y'all, I understand why you're saying that. Because, you know, you are like me. You're a Christian. You believe that we were created. But here's the thing. I also believe we were created. But whenever God said, I made you in my image, I'm not exactly sure that he meant that he looks exactly like Bob down the street with a beer gut and you know, a hairier chest than me. When he said I made you in my image, what I think that he meant was he took a template, took an animal, and he implanted his penchant for creation, free will, all this stuff into us, so that we mirrored him in many ways. But not necessarily like, this is all genetics, right? Like my soul, your soul doesn't look like your body. Right? Because when you die, you don't look like you here on Earth, you know? It's just a representation that we have for us because, you know, we don't know how to describe the way that our souls look because we don't know. But I'm not saying that we are apes in an evolutionary sense. Some of you might say that. Some of you don't agree necessarily in creation, and some of you are fully on board with the whole evolution idea and that we evolved from apes, and that's perfectly fine. But whether you believe that we evolved from apes or you think that we were created, we still fall into the category of great ape. That is what we are. And many of our animalistic instincts are apish in nature. It's just true. So when many of you were angry at me in my article talking about how we are apes and that's why we would never, like, we are egocentric and tribal, you know, and we are ambitious. You know, we want the best. We want more. What I'm trying to say is that is a part of our apish nature that we cannot escape, which is why communism and humanity will never work together. It can't work together. Does that make sense? I'm not saying, you know, I'm not saying that we weren't created, but I am saying that we fall into a certain category of animal, which is obviously true. It's a biological fact. But I'm not saying you weren't created. God might have used a template. I don't know. I don't know the man, but I don't know him. I don't know his mind. But I want to make it clear to everybody, this was not supposed to devolve into a theological debate. It wasn't supposed to fall into like a debate about evolution. I am just stating that we belong to a certain category. What's up, everybody? How are you doing today? What's up, Red? What's up, Pickled Squirrel? Badger! It just hasn't been done correctly, Morse. It just hasn't been. Dude, that's just the funny thing that they always say this. It's never been tried. Communism has never been tried, which is why we don't have communism. Dude, it has been tried. The reason that it's always been tried. And it always fails because we are not the correct species for communism. Communism requires that you abandon your tribe and make the state your tribe, which is impossible to do in the long run. And you'll notice, like, it even doesn't allow you one of your greatest assets to yourself, and that is your children. It takes your children from you. It basically robs you of all individuality, which is not something that our species can handle. We are individuals. We are egocentric. You know? So communism attempts to take that from you and say everything that you are belongs to the state. Which is actually basically a tribe saying everything that you are belongs to us. Because communism is, in itself, a tribe running everything. Because all communism is oligarchy. There are people at the top, and you'll notice very much so that, like, you know, the communists at the top don't live like everyone else. They live the high life. Always. But communism forbids you from actually being an individual, which we cannot do. We physically cannot do it. And in order to curb that, it actually preys on your apish fear of harm and loss. Do ants fear... I just absolutely muted myself. Do ants and bees fear harm and loss? Not really. They will gladly sacrifice themselves for the good of the colony. We are not capable of that. Because if someone comes up to you and says, hey, I need you to die right now. I need you to throw yourself at this big guy. There are people who have virtues that will do it, but if it's not in your interest per se, then you won't do it. If someone comes up to you and says, hey, we need you to sacrifice your family in order for the greater good to be done here. Like, you know, your family has to die. We're going to shoot you so that these 3 other families can live. You would be like, screw you. I'm not letting you screw my family over. I'm going to kill you first. Right? Communism requires you to make sacrifices that you would otherwise not be willing to make. And if you are being forced into that position, or I mean, communism has to force you into that position in order for you to comply, because you won't do it naturally. You know what I'm saying? Communism is so unnatural to the human condition. So that's one of the reasons that it won't work. So it has been tried, but it can't work. Not only can we not cooperate with it, but the corruption that happens at the top, whenever you give someone ultimate power, corruption is soon to follow. The corruption that happens at the top absolutely is anti-communistic when you really think about it. If you know even one person at work that doesn't work as hard as you, then you know communism will always fail. It's basic human nature that prevents every concept of communism from working. Exactly, Hollygrad. Exactly. There was actually, I had a video. I made a video not long ago. I want to say it was like 2018, 2019. And I basically, you guys, here, we'll watch it. We'll watch it. Hang on. Yeah. All right. So I will shut up for a minute and let you guys just watch this. Because honestly, it explains everything so much better than I could right here. I think I did it good. Also, it's a story, and it comes with moving pictures. Enjoy. Okay, so I've been gone a while, but you can't blame me. It's been a a long, strange trip. I've worked at some places that I really loved and some places that I did not at all love, but it all distracted me from doing what I really love, which is making YouTube videos for you guys. And to make up for my absence, I'm going to tell you guys a story. Now, this story is inspired by socialism. It's that up-and-coming ideology that everybody in the younger group wants, despite the fact that it's never worked before, you idiots, man. Apparently, today, the people advocating for socialism in America know better than all the people trying to flee it. Wasn't real socialism, bro. Wasn't real. Yes, it is. It was real socialism. Now, you can see people falling in love all over the place for socialism because of the appearance of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and everyone's love of Bernie Sanders. But to show you how socialism's so fragile, I'm not going to show you anything like past and present examples because those don't seem to work. I'm going to tell you a story of love, a story of loss, and probably some dead gay people. This is a story about how one guy in love could collapse an entire socialist system. Our story begins in the socialist paradise of Socialistville. As you can see, it's perfect. The sun is shining, the streets are completely clean. For some odd reason, there has been no inequality whatsoever. Everything is a paradise. Nothing has gone wrong, miraculously. And it's here that we meet the hero of our story, Bernie Broham. Now, Broham, he's a model citizen here in Socialistville, okay? He supports all the right causes. He shows up to all the Antifa rallies. He's a male feminist, quote unquote. He likes to scream at white people for being white. And one day, Broham is walking back to his government-assigned housing when he sees the most beautiful girl he has ever seen in Socialistville. I mean, this girl makes him go, oh my god, I would give up soy for you. And I fucking love soy. But there's a problem. See, there's another guy here who also has his eye on the hot girl in Socialistville, and Broham's his rival is just way hotter. Let's face facts. Broham cannot compare to this masculine-looking dude. Now, to Broham, this is completely unfair, okay? How dare somebody else be more than anybody in Socialistville, including in looks? There is a handsomeness gap in Socialistville. So Broham, he understands that he's got to up his game. You know, he's got to get more stuff. But he can't do that in a socialist society where everyone is monetarily equal. So he's got a huge problem on his hands. But true to his socialist form, Broham decides, like any good socialist would, that he deserves this stuff, so he's gonna take without asking. He justifies it as a handsomeness tax, all right? You know, everyone else is kind of have to pay him for being less handsome than the handsome guy. So Broham goes about lying, stealing, manipulating the system and everything, and he succeeds in getting everything that he needs. And he's well on his way to tempting his lady fair with extra rations of food and toilet paper. By the way, so messed up is the socialist country of Venezuela that they actually pay their military members who do outstanding service with toilet paper. Look at how happy these people are. But since Socialistville is a socialist economy and they don't really deal in abundance, that means that the stuff that Broham stole is going to mean a deficit for other people. Let's remember that producing excess without reward causes people to produce nothing but the bare minimum. So unless you force somebody to do more work, you're gonna have a deficit of items. But there is no force here in Socialistville. Remember, everyone's happy, happy, happy. Suddenly the to everyone according to his need promise that came with signing up for this nonsense is broken. And there's this short-changed guy sitting at home. We'll call him Randy. All right, he's sitting there and he's listening to Big Brother talk about how great the society is, and he's like, fuck that, I need some toilet paper. So Randy, being the go-get-him kind of guy he is, he's like, fuck this system, and he goes out and he gets his, all right? He fills in the blank that Broham left him, and what's more, he takes more items just in case this ever happens again. And obviously, in our society of non-abundance, this is going to cause stuff to go missing for more people. So they're going to come looking for their stuff too. And people are like starting to get pissed now. You know, they're not getting the medicine they need. The food rations are not coming in. All right, they're sitting around pissed off. They're like, yeah, all I got to wipe my ass with is books now. All I got is the Communist Manifesto, which I guess is appropriate. And Randy and his boys, they get smart. They figure that they can economy better than the state does and end up creating a black market using supply and demand. They get really rich. And attract all the honeys. And the government's like, oh, what do we do now? We got a black market. We have competition to the government. We can't have that. People are out there rioting in the streets. They're starving. They don't have their medicine. What do we do? Well, there's only one thing you can do, isn't there? So the government sends out the police to subdue the populace and make sure that no one's hoarding supplies, so they're raiding homes, and people are like, hey, you can't come in here, and they're like, yeah, we can. It's a socialist utopia. This is all public housing and stuff. None of this is yours. And people start getting really mad about all these searches and seizures, and so they take to the streets and they're protesting. And the government's like, all right, this is causing way too much unrest. Gotta pull back on the free speech, guys. Sorry. So the police come out and they're enforcing it, pissing off the people even more. And at this point now, Socialistville is just on fire, okay? The people are battling the cops in the streets, they're protesting, they're rioting, they're setting stuff on fire. And in the midst of all this chaos, one charismatic guy decides, hey, maybe it's my time. And this guy gathers everyone around him and he's like, hey, we're starving, we've got no medicine, this economy sucks. This government can't do anything worth a damn, but if you put me in charge, I can fix everything. All we gotta do is have a little revolution. And a rabid mob, being a rabid mob, they don't look too much into this guy. They just like the way he sounds, and so they're like, yeah, all right, yeah, we can do that. And then he's like, hey, maybe we can kill some gays. And they're like, what? No, nothing, I didn't say anything. And the revolution is on, man. You got the government fighting the people in the streets. People die on both sides, but eventually, the people win, they topple the government, they arrest all the politicians, and the people end up putting their revolutionary on the throne, and he just makes it so much worse. Any privileges that the Socialistvillites might have had, he just kind of takes them away arbitrarily whenever he feels like or when it's convenient to him. He ends up hoarding everything. He lacks for nothing while people starve and die. He ends up killing anyone belonging to the LGBT community, which I told you that was going to happen. I don't know what it is with socialist dictators and gay people, but they hate them. And the people are sitting around going, oh, how could this have all happened? How did we get here? It happened because you're a socialist system, and one guy wanted to get laid. That's all. Broham struck out, by the way. He didn't get with the hot girl, but he ended up with some social justice warrior feminist named like Rage Flower or something, and she ended up living with him in their apartment, and she bears 2 children to her boyfriend Chad, and they all live happily together until Broham realizes that he was morbidly depressed and threw himself off the top of the apartment building. I think we just heard a pretty good story. It could compete with Shakespearean tragedies, I feel like. But now for the moral of the story. Socialism can never work in conjunction with human nature. Somebody is always going to want more, or somebody's always going to want better than what they currently have. Even the most stand-up of socialists is at some point in time going to fall into that trap. The reason being is that we are not hive-minded robots, all right? We are advanced apes. If resources were infinite and we had no egocentric tendencies, then socialism absolutely would work. But that's not the reality that we live in. As it stands, resources are finite, and each of us is going to be unequal to another person in some sort of way, whether they're born with it or they become that way. And I know what you're thinking, oh, one guy could never bring down an entire socialist system. Well, let me tell you something, folks. There is more than one Bernie Broham out there. There is always going to be more than one person out there trying to impress a girl, or trying to impress a boss, trying to get ahead, trying to get something they don't have. This is nature. Humanity merged with a successful socialist system is an impossibility, on par with a flat earth. Yes, what I'm saying is that socialists are the equivalent of flat earthers. Later. Not gonna lie, I totally used that opportunity to take my dogs out because I completely forgot to. Before stream started. Anyway, so that explained it way better than I could on stream. I gave you pictures. I hope you guys enjoyed that. I had a lot of fun making it. What's up? Hey, Amtrue13. What's going on? Are you beach ready? Did y'all remember that? That was like back a long time ago during that whole are you beach body ready thing, and that was like when the feminists were like raising all sorts of hell about how women are objectified and like what is healthy. And so yeah, we started, that was when the great meme war really began in earnest. The are you beach body ready thing. The lady on the billboard. So good. 10 ply, that's wiping your ass with a 2x4. Oh, maybe I guess if you really break it down, that's a lot of ply. Dude, toilet paper. Okay, I made that choice of toilet paper on purpose, and I ended up being somewhat a little bit right. Toilet paper is, in my opinion, if everything was to go down, right, like society would collapse, toilet paper would become gold. Because what are you going to wipe your butt with? Seriously, think about it. Sound is really low on the video. Oh, I'm sorry. See, the sound is so crazy for this thing. The levels are always off. I can't, I don't know what it is. Surprised this vid didn't get banned from YouTube. I mean, my channel is a baby channel, so, you know, I kind of flew under the radar. You done good. Thank you very much. But are you motorcycle at the beach parking lot, buddy? I'm from Galveston, and we have like it's almost like a smaller Sturgis at Galveston every year. It's bike rally week. Man, I swear to you, you will not find anybody who is from the island, though, does not ride their bike on the seawall. They don't ride their bike on the seawall. It's too dangerous. Tourists will open their car door as you try to drive by right into the street. Kids run out there. You have to avoid them. I swear, so many people who ride motorcycles have either become injured, destroy their bikes, or worse. Like, it's just very rare now. Wipe like a real mountain man and use a bike. Gotta toughen up that sphincter. You sound fine now, just with a different media. It was low. Okay. All right, that makes sense. Okay, so, thank you for enjoying that presentation. I hope you liked it. I made that like a while back. And like, I still use it because it's still so relevant, you know, because it doesn't change. Nothing changes about who we are as a species. So it's like, you can't use communism and be human at the same time. It's just impossible. Oh, CNN guest gives the game away and deranged rant on controlling free speech. So I want to talk about the free speech thing today, because I've been looking at the headlines. I've been noticing, as you probably have too, I mean, you're not blind, that we have a lot of issues from the left right now trying to form new ways of controlling speech. And then I think this was always the plan. Eventually they were going to institute a lot of free speech controlling institutions and ways of censoring you. I think that they thought that they were on track, and then Elon Musk happened. And then they just kind of fast forwarded it really fast, which they're doing to their own detriment. I'm not exactly sure how, this Ministry of Truth thing was supposed to kick off, but I have a really weird feeling that Elon Musk probably pushed forward their ideals or pushed forward their agenda really fast. We'll say that. Toilet paper, feminine hygiene products, and condoms. There's your gold. That and bacon grease. Bacon grease is going to be incredible. Trust me, because it does everything. So anyway, they were casually discussing on CNN. Talking about, like, how are we going to control free speech? Well, let's look at Europe. By the way, never look at Europe. Okay? Never look at Europe. I'm so sick and tired of the leftists always saying stuff like, oh, they do it in Europe. You know that there's a reason that we're far more successful than Europe. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that every single thing they do in Europe is worse than here in America. I'm sure there are some things we can take from there that we would benefit from. But when I say some, I really just mean some. There's a reason that we're the most successful country in the world, that we have the best healthcare. And I don't want to hear anything about, Canadian healthcare is so much. It's not. I don't want to hear about how you think the NHS has better healthcare. It doesn't. And that has been proven to us time and time and time and time again. Where do you think that all these world leaders go for their medical treatments? You think that they're going to Canada? No, they're coming here. They're coming to America. There's a reason we're number one. Mayorkas stated that the board would not monitor American citizens. Yeah, I don't believe that for a minute. We're going to cover that in a second. That Mayorkas quote shouldn't exist to begin with, period. Freedom of speech is no business of the government. Preach. Preach. We left Europe for a reason. Exactly. Everything before 1776 was a mistake. All right, let's go ahead and watch this because I think it's pretty incredible that these people are now just talking about it in the open. By the way, if CNN, I don't know when their move to real news begins, but I think it should begin pretty soon, because after watching this, I don't know how many Americans just sit and go, "Oh yeah, CNN's a reliable news source." I don't see, this is blatant authoritarianism, blatant censorship pushing. Basically, blatant screw you, you say what I tell you to kind of stuff right here.
No, I think there's a bigger problem that when we focus on the personalities of people like Elon Musk, and people say, oh, I think Elon's thinking this or that, there's a bigger problem here about...
By the way, just real fast, this Chiron is one of the worst thought out. Elon Musk won Twitter, but can he win over users? Have you seen the man's following? Have you seen his, y'all, that man straight up ratioed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. He's won over the users. The users are won. We want Elon Musk in charge. These people are so bubbled that they, honest to God, think that most people agree with them. They don't. They don't.
About how we are going to control the channels of communication in this country. In 1927, we had the Radio Act. 1934, the Communications Act. Congress stepped in. We made rules. FCC wasn't great, but it's still regulating the broadcast industry. You can't use vulgar language. You can't do all these things with speech. We gave over our what amounts to our airwaves or our internet waves to Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. And we are in so much trouble because those guys believe in making money. We've already seen that with the 2016 election in Zuckerberg when he was taking rubles for ads from Russia and saying, oh, I think it's crazy to think they had any influence on this election. Musk is the same. Musk doesn't want it. You know, he's upset with the SEC, tried to, how dare they question him? You know what I'm saying? This is dangerous. We can't think anymore in this country. We don't have people, no, I'm serious, we don't have people in Congress who can make regulations that can make it work. I think we can look to the Western countries in Europe for how they are trying to limit it. But you need controls on this. You need regulation. You cannot let these guys control discourse in this country, or we are headed to hell. We are there. Trump opened the gates of hell, and now they're chasing us down.
Wait, we gotta get it.
Trump opened the gates of hell. Good. This guy is frantically talking about censoring you. Frantically. I'm not using that word like I'm not trying to be boisterous here when I use that word. I'm not speaking in hyperbole. That dude straight up was frantically trying to say we need to censor people in this country. And by the way, there's a difference I think between radio and I think there's a difference between TV. Right? I mean, obviously you don't want to broadcast stuff that is super appropriate on television, hardcore porn. You don't want to use like incredibly harsh language. You know, it's just not conducive to a good atmosphere if you do. Right? Some of these things can be actually very harmful. And I still argue that there's still stuff on TV that I'm surprised that they're airing it. Right? Now, I'm not one for censorship per se, but I understand why people back in the day wanted certain things to be stricken from the air. Like, we can't do that. You know, obviously hardcore porn being one of them, or you know, complete nudity. The internet, however, is different. The internet is, in my opinion, more conducive for a free speech atmosphere, not because it is only certain people who are getting to say certain things, but it's because it allows for everyone to say certain things. And I think that there are free speech platforms out there that should be exalted because it allows for the transference of ideas between me and you, not necessarily between a spokesperson and all these other people. And I think that there is a big difference here in value. Communication from peer to peer is great. Communication from radio or TV is B to P. Right? Business to peer. Or consumer. I should say B to C. Business to consumer. No matter what it is. It doesn't matter what it is. It's business to consumer. Internet is peer to peer. It's consumer to consumer. Now, given businesses can also talk to consumers, but that's not the primary purpose. of many websites. Twitter is not there for the business. It's there for the person. And that's kind of why Elon Musk realized, and he said people need to be able to speak to each other without a business dictating what they can and can't say. Free speech is worth a ton. And these guys are scared of free speech because they know for a fact that once we can talk to each other freely, whatever business they're in, whether it's political, whether it's just selling Pepsi, I don't know, doesn't matter. Once we get to speak to each other freely, their narratives become a lot harder to hold up. And they're terrified of that. They're terrified that you and I will exchange information that makes them look bad or makes their agenda look bad, helps each other understand why and how whatever they're trying to push on us will fail. Guaranteed, if many of these like CNN, MSNBC, ABC, all these alphabet networks, guaranteed, if they could strip away people like Tim Pool or Jeremy from The Quartering, all these guys, Nerdrotic, all these guys bounding into comics, redstate.com, doesn't matter. They would strip us away so that only they could actually have control over the narrative. The narrative is everything for these people, everything. Because if the narrative is solid and they are capable of pushing it in a vacuum, then their agenda becomes that much easier to push. And this guy is frantically calling for censorship because he knows for a fact that if we actually speak to each other and we speak to each other freely, then the agenda that he supports, the narrative that he supports, is going to be threatened. This is one of the reasons why you have these people trying to spread these words, use these words like misinformation. There is another way, since they can't silence you by force, they are going to try to make it appear that everything that you're saying is wrong and dangerous. And they are now turning around to try to use the word misinformation as a way to legally silence you. There is no scenario where they can sit there and push any kind of censorship on you and have it help this nation. None. A society thrives on the back of a free exchange of ideas, because a free exchange of ideas, I'm not just talking about philosophical ideas. I'm also talking about any kind of inventions, technological progression, medical information. All of this stuff benefits from a free exchange of information. Are you going to run into lies out there? Absolutely. Every human, they might not even know that they're telling a mistruth, because every human is fallible. Every human is wrong. Every person. But this is why more information is better than no information or controlled information, because how wrong was the information that was being delivered to us by the Democrats, by Fauci? (1984) Animal Farm. Yeah, debate is necessary for society to function, not yelling racist. Exactly. But yelling racist is part of the debate. We have to have the dumbest of arguments thrown out there so that we can dispose of it. Hey, Badger nailed it. Badger absolutely just nailed it. You're going to come across bad information, but if you are able to discuss information in a free environment, all information is going to be weighed and measured. And if it's found wanting, then we toss it out. And there's so much bad information floating around out there at any point in time. And I want that bad information floating around out there. Specifically, I want the bad information being spoken by people who believe the bad information. I want you to see who is saying this stuff. And I want their free opinions expressed. One of the reasons that Libs of TikTok is so successful isn't because they are actually creating a message themselves. They're actually allowing people to speak for themselves. We've talked about this before on the show. Libs of TikTok doesn't do anything. They don't edit anything. They just allow you to see what they are saying without filters, without messaging. They are allowing them to speak freely. And we are capable and able to take their information, these people, and actually weigh it ourselves. And we come out constantly with the idea that these people suck. Get rid of them. I don't want them in charge. They're horrible. However, if they were filtered through the lens, you've seen it multiple times, if they were filtered through the lens of the mainstream media or any kind of activist messaging and massaging, these people suddenly are heroes. They're heroic teachers. They're educators who are just looking out for the kids and are trying to make a safe environment for the children. That's what they tell you, and we see what they are because we are able to exchange that information in an environment where we can speak freely. That's simple. Have you ever thought of going on Tim Pool's show? Bet he would love to have you. I would love to go on Tim Pool's show. I look up to Tim Pool quite a bit. But they don't stop yelling to have that debate. Well, I mean, debate, here's the thing about debate. You know, many leftist arguments, and I'm not saying that the left is only guilty of this, but they are guilty of it to a much greater extent than the right. Many of the leftist arguments that you see out there, the talking points and narratives, only thrive in a vacuum. It's easy to push that, the vast majority of scientists, like 98% or something they said like that? 98% of scientists say that the global warming is real and we need to do something about it today. Okay, if you were just to take that at face value, holy crap, that's a jarring number. That's a jarring piece of news. Oh my God. But then all of a sudden you get, in a vacuum, that would be crazy. You would almost get anyone to believe whatever you want about global warming or global cooling or climate change or environmental catastrophes, whatever. However, once you start to introduce arguments and other scientists and other facts and figures, suddenly that 98% starts to get a little wobbly. And you start to question, who are these scientists? You look into the scientists. Now you're speaking freely about how the fact that these scientists, many of them aren't even environmental scientists. And who are doing these numbers? Who is being interviewed? Like in an environment of free speech, we get more information. And the more information comes out, the more their agenda, their talking points, their narrative looks dumb. And that is constantly what's happening. Constantly. The left tries to create a narrative, and more information destroys it. And I don't mean like more like a heap of information, which, I mean, we could always find. But I mean, like, sometimes people will just throw out little points that it's like, oh, yeah, now you look dumb. When the world's central digital currency is mandated, free speech will be taxed when not in line with the owners. In 10 years, the implants will be next to mandated. God, I hope not. I actually fear implants. Although we did have a really interesting conversation about bionics the other day and whether or not people would like get bionic eyes if their eyes start to go. Different stream. Different conversations for a different stream, but it's interesting to think about. Ultimately, the First Amendment is what matters. Well, here's the thing. The First Amendment is number one for a reason. Because it pretty much is the backbone of every freedom. If you can't speak freely, what else can't you do? And then the Second Amendment's interesting that the Second Amendment came first, because without the Second Amendment, the Bill of Rights is just a wish list. Libs is awesome, shining a light on their insanity. Yeah. And again, I say this is the brilliance of libs of TikTok. They don't edit anything. The only thing they add really is a blurb for the tweet, but they let the left speak for themselves without the filter. It's pretty awesome. I studied meteorology for 6 years in Navy. Climate changes every day. All the weather comes from the sun. See, there's so many factors for climate, and we've spoken about this. We've dedicated an entire show to it. You can't just tell me in 10 years what the weather's going to be like. You can't. My weathermen can't even tell you what the weather's going to be like in 2 hours. Humans are capable of independent judgment. That's what social engineers fear most. That is very well put. I think that there's a reason. Look at China. If you look at China, there is a massive censorship kind of, I want to say, infrastructure in place. Everything down to not just controlling what happens online, but like you can't even, they have a social credit system in place. So if you step out of line, you start to lose privileges within that society. You might even go to jail if you get low enough. It's almost like that Black Mirror episode. But that's just more incentive for a citizen of China to shut up and do what they're told. Because they don't want to lose, like, travel privileges. Anything is possible. Elon is working on implants for disabled people. See, that would be awesome. I think that there are certain things that would be awesome. I obviously don't want, like, microchips being implanted in my skin and stuff that, you know, keeps track of my whereabouts and social credit systems and all that stuff. That's scary. Bionics, though, I'm totally down for. I would totally replace my eyes. Because I'm going to get old, and my eyes are going to start failing me. Why not get better ones? Second Amendment is there as a backup to the First Amendment. Yeah, it's the Second Amendment is the teeth. You know, it's the teeth. It makes sure that if anybody puts their hand in near any of the amendments, the teeth gnash. They make being stupid hurts. They make being stupid hurt. I just said, I'm smart. I'm smart. They can't somewhat accurately predict weather for 7 days from now. Dude, this happened to me the other day where I was literally like sitting there thinking that it was going to rain because I was told, hey, you can expect thunder showers. No joke, I'm sitting there watching as the sun came out. Not 20 minutes later. When Mayorkas tells us not to worry about the disinformation board, start worrying. This is from Nicorama. It's an awesome article. I'm going to go ahead and dive into this. Department of Homeland Security. I'm smart. SMRT. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. I gotta say that is a pretty cool name. It sucks that this name is attached to such a bad person because it really is cool. Alejandro Mayorkas hit the Sunday shows trying to sell the disinformation governance board that he's in charge of, which the Biden administration announced this week following the announcement that Elon Musk would be buying Twitter. So Elon Musk buys Twitter, and now all these people are freaking out, and the government suddenly wants to take action. That's really interesting because when Twitter, the de facto public town square, was owned by radical leftists, they had no problem with it. Now all of a sudden it's, we got to watch out. The announcement about the board has created such a furor in response. Mayorkas has been delegated to clean it up and describe it as something that we need not fear. It's a good thing, you see, according to Mayorkas, despite what you might think about government determining what constitutes disinformation. Again, disinformation is nothing but something that the left finds challenging to their narrative. That's all disinformation is today. Disinformation is no longer just like bad info. It just means, does it inconvenience the leftist narrative in some way? That it's misinformation. Mayorkas hit CNN's State of the Union with Dana Bash, NBC's Meet the Press with Chuck Todd, and Fox News Sundays with Brett Baer. Bash asked him on exactly what the board will do. Mayorkas said,
let's talk about a different topic, which is what you are calling, your department is calling the Disinformation Governance Board. You unveiled that this week. Republicans are calling it Orwellian and comparing it to the Ministry of Truth in the novel 1984. Can you clarify what exactly is this? What exactly will this Disinformation Governance Board do? Will it monitor American citizens?
Dan, I'm very pleased to do so. It's clear. I mean, those criticisms are precisely the opposite of what this small working group within the Department of Homeland Security will do. And I think we probably could have done a better job of communicating what it does and does not do. So the fact is that disinformation that creates a threat to the security of the homeland.
There it is. A threat. Disinformation, a threat. Okay, who decides what disinformation is? Who gets to lord over that concept? There is no possible way that you can have a disinformation governance board without that board having its own opinions and biases. And guaranteed, if this is being created by Democrats, every single person on that board is going to be a leftist of some capacity. And given the state of the Democrat Party right now, why wouldn't the board of disinformation governance be just like the board that Twitter had pre-Elon Musk purchase?
is our responsibility to address, and this department has been addressing it for years.
It's not your
throughout
responsibility
the
to
years
address
of the
it.
prior administration and an ongoing basis. Disinformation from Russia,
Right.
China,
We know the
Iran.
problems, but it's still not clear to me how this governance board will act. What will it do?
So what it does is it works to ensure that the way in which we address threats, the connectivity between threats and acts of violence are addressed without infringing on free speech, protecting civil rights and civil liberties, the right of privacy. And
That's like saying I'm going to neuter you so that you can better breed. That makes no sense. So they're going to address threats tied with disinformation. Again, who's Catherine Fides? Thank you, Fids. Catherine, I'm going to say Fides. It looks like Fides. You can tell me how to pronounce your name. Catherine, but thank you so much for the subscription. There's no possible way that you can sit there and say we're going to look into how disinformation and physical violence is tied together, because judging by the way that the left has been trying to tie even just random speech to physical violence, like you hear it all the time. Let me give you an example. You hear it all the time from like the trans community where they say that even a simple joke results in violence. Right? You can't even point out simple biological facts on Twitter, at least hitherto. Couldn't point out simple biological facts on Twitter without Twitter telling you that you were encouraging violence. So these are the same people. This is the same ideological group here. And they're saying, well, we're gonna stop the spread of disinformation because it might cause violence. Right, but you have a very perverted, skewed idea of what disinformation is to begin with. And moreover, it's not your freaking business, bro. It's not, because this is a free speech. This violates the First Amendment. You can't paint it. It's still, no matter how many coats of paint on it, it's still rusty crap. There's no getting around this. This is a violation of the First Amendment. Period. This will not hold up. It can't. This will be taken to the Supreme Court, where I guarantee you it will be destroyed. A small working group of people who spent their working lives as professional liars. Exactly. Sounds a lot like if you have nothing to hide argument. Guaranteed that will be used at some point in time. If the disinformation board had been around in the 60s, we'd still be fighting the Vietnam War. It's insane to me. But if it's disinformation from outside the country, why DHS? Why wouldn't the CIA be handling this issue? That is a really good point, Badger. That is a really good point. Why do they need that here? Why? And this is to protect, I keep using that word, the homeland. And they talk about how Russian and Chinese disinformation may affect the United States. But the issue is that they have been pointing at Americans who have been speaking random facts, and calling it Russian disinformation. How often do you see MSNBC and CNN take anything, something completely normal, something completely logical, and go, this is benefiting Putin? It happens all the time. And now they're creating a governance board for it to police these claims made by CNN and MSNBC effectively. They're all CIA or working at MSNBC. How are you going to police this disinformation that threatens the homeland without policing its citizens? This is straight lies. This is what I'm saying. This is exactly what I mean. This is a violation of the First Amendment, period. They're going to say, well, we're having to censor you or silence you because it's a threat to the homeland. Well, no. First off, you can't do that. You can't. It doesn't matter what you say. The only way that we can be censored is through privatized organizations and their control over their own platforms. That's the only reason they could do it, is because they technically own these as private businesses. What they're trying to do is say, well, we're going to create a government version of what Twitter, like the Twitter Trust and Safety Council. We're going to turn that into a government board. You can't. You can't do that. I can go out into the street right now and proclaim men are men, women are women, and they can't intersect. They can't interchange. They are what they are. And no one can stop me. No one. If I have certain opinions about, I can't say it on YouTube, funny enough, but it just goes to show you what I'm talking about. I can go outside and make proclamations about election safety, and I can make proclamations about, inflation. I can make proclamations about Hunter Biden's ties to Russia and Ukraine. And I can do so without fear of being arrested. But if I were to say, like, the Hunter Biden thing, for instance, out in the street, this guy wants to be able to go, that's Russian disinformation, you're going to have to shut up. Can't do that. You can't do that. If you were to arrest me for saying that, I would take you to court and you would lose immediately. What's up, Brad? Isn't disinformation resulting in physical violence what happened in Portland? Oh, sorry, was I being... This is the guy that thinks everything is fine at the southern border. Mayorkas is the chief No, I mean, like, but I don't know. Between Mayorkas and, like, Adam Schiff, I have trouble judging who is full of more misinformation. Actual misinformation. This is how tyrants box in speech. Silence is violence. Speaking the truth is violence. The only freedoms we have are what are allowed by our betters. Yep. This is exactly true. January 6th people still don't have due process. But they're guilty of disinformation. The easy way, that needs to happen, by the way. And you know what? I want these January 6th trials to be just as public as the Johnny Depp trials. Not kidding. The easy way to see the abuse of this disinfo board. Look how Hunter's laptop was widely accepted as Russian disinformation absent any evidence. Exactly, Brad. Spot on. You want to talk about disinformation being called, or information being called disinformation? Hunter Biden's laptop story is one of the prime examples. They did everything in their power to shut that down, especially on the private business level, but they started wailing from the top of Mount Bullcrap that it was all Russian disinformation, that it was a Russian plot to harm Joe Biden and his reputation and his career and his campaign and yada, yada, yada. And it was real. They had to admit it was real later on. But if there was let's say that there was a governance information board, they would be able to say, hey, anyone trying to spread the idea that Hunter Biden's laptop was found with all this incriminating evidence against the Biden family on it, you're going to jail. That's kind of what they're pushing. The only point I'll disagree with you on, the Supreme Court is a toss-up. We can't trust them anymore to uphold the Constitution, see Obamacare mandated rulings. I think that the judges that Trump pushed into place during his time as president really helped us out on that regard. And also, one thing needs to be understood. Trump spent a lot of time. He doesn't get enough credit for this, I feel like. He spent a lot of time appointing federal judges. A lot of time. Obama appointed hardly any, but like Trump set to work appointing as many as he possibly could. And it got to a point where even the left, like members of the left, like their thought leaders and stuff like that, were like, if any of these cases really gets, and this is one of the reasons that you see us winning court cases so much on the right against these people. I forget who said it in particular, but he basically said, if any of these cases get to a federal level, Republicans have won. It's over. And if he even goes to Supreme Court, chances are Republicans win there too. Personal opinion is an individual right. Yep. God-given right that the government can't say anything about. This guy can't take that from us. Period. Give Biden time, though. He is working on that. They've always been trying to find ways to curb free speech. Always. This is one of the most blatant attempts, and it's so weird to me that they are clearly engaging in a losing strategy to the left. Clearly. They have been for some time. Many of the things that they are taking on, the opinions that they have, the agendas that they are pushing are 110% bad for their party. It is causing people to turn away from them constantly, and yet they continue to try to push the Overton window to the left. And I do not understand why they do it unless you try to look at it through the lens not of, politicians or leaders who are out for the goodwill, or not goodwill, but the goodness of the people, but through the lens of an activist. All the evidence of the term Russian disinformation that has spawned since Trump's election has been solely to deny Republicans and Democrats. Yep. I'm still waiting for the September 11th color code to become green again. Is that really not green yet? I guess so. I mean, it allows them to keep the TSA in place. God, I hate the TSA. Portland is done for. Not sure if it can be saved. I have a theory. I think it's probably going to it's going to take some time. But, I mean, have you guys seen how the West Coast is effectively losing so many people? And they're all migrating to places they're migrating to red states. They're going to Texas. They're going to Florida, Arizona. The West Coast, I think, is going to empty out quite a bit, especially as the states become poor because all the people have left. There's not enough people to uphold the tax burden that the politicians put on the people. And people are going to start to turn on them. They're going to think it's too hard to live there, so they're going to want lighter restrictions, fewer taxes. And then after a while, their economy is going to start to turn around a little bit. Businesses are going to start opening. Jobs are going to start opening up. And people are going to start coming back to the West Coast. But in this case, these are going to be pretty business-minded, laissez-faire capitalists who come there. And suddenly you're going to have a West Coast that is starting to turn from blue to purple and then eventually probably red. While Texas and Florida sadly lose their identity and kind of turn blue. It's going to be sad. But, I mean, no culture lasts forever, including Texas, which really sucks. Adult Teen Challenge Christian Recovery is way to mix church and St. Festard in Russia. I'm afraid I'm not exactly sure what you're talking about there. Trump and McConnell used the rules and Democrats created to push all those judges through. Yeah, it was kind of funny. The left is running a totally bad platform. They don't care if they consolidate their power over the USA in the next 3 years. They don't. Again, these people seem to be completely. It's almost like the kids got a hold of the keys to the car. They don't know how to drive it. They don't understand the rules. They're going to crash the car. They're going to endanger everyone else while they do it too. If you look at what the Democrats are doing through the lens of what an activist would do if they had power, that's what Democrats are doing. They don't care. All they want is to see their way done. Their will be done. That's kind of all it is. And they do not care if it destroys. Because I think that they think that if they just push everything through really fast and just have it situated and in place, it'll stick. And we have to live with that from here on. They're not entirely wrong either, is the funny part. Because once you put it in a government organization, it's hard to get rid of it. I mean, it's almost impossible. The DHS is testing the waters with BS Joe Biden governance boards. Stelter is praising the disinformation board, so this will be disbanded in about 3 weeks. Oh, poor Stelter. Amazon already left Portland. Yeah. Now they're trying to get Twitter to move down to Texas. Texas is just going to get flooded, man. And I hate to say it. It breaks my heart in half. Because Texas thrived from being a red state with no taxes, liberty-minded people. If you really wanted to see leftism, you had to go to the cities like Houston, Austin, San Antonio, and even then, you would still run into a lot of Republicans. It was a good balance. But with all these people moving, my hope is that they get to Texas and they realize, oh man, the cost of living here, the quality of life is so much better in Texas. We need to keep it in place. But I've noticed that as more and more people move to places like Austin and Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, you know, the cost of living goes up and up and up and up and up. You know, in my house just became more expensive to live in, you know, so it just goes to show you that at some point in time, there's going to be a point where they go, oh, it's almost no different. Why don't we just vote in Democrats? Gotta hope not. Mixture of church and state is illegal under the Constitution. Christian fronts using drug rehabs as fronts for police stingrays that have full intel on every cell phone in the city, watching every letter of every text in shifts. Scary. China's Winnie the Pooh is stress testing the very limits of the people in China, a precursor in taking over Taiwan. Probably not wrong. I'm pretty sure that Taiwan is going to get moved on sooner than later. I think California is mostly red now. Just the big democratic cities have control. No, that's always been the case, but I think at some point in time, people in the cities are even going to go, this is nonsense. We got to stop this. We need better people in charge. Their motto, go as far as fast as possible, even if they do crash, since they won't lose all they gain in their eyes. Yeah, exactly. DHS, TSA et al. Were temporary knee-jerk fear reactions to September 11th. It's been over 20 years. People have no built bureaucratic careers, or have not built Dennis, could you do me a favor and not, put in big words that I have trouble reading? Gosh. People have people have not built bureaucratic careers on it. Say that 3 times fast. But temp has to end sometime, even if it means disbanding. I think the TSA should go. And I think that in its place, you should have, you should have marshals on flights. I think that that's a good idea. But also, I think that the private airliners should provide their own security. And you can judge which airline you feel the safest at and use them. That's what I think. Florida is getting flooded with arrivals too, but they are not carrying blue state voters with them. The polls show more support for the GOP here. I mean, for a while, that was the same with Texas. Many people came here from California and New York, and they were like, God, this is awesome. I don't want this to go away, so they start voting GOP. But I don't know. The more people move here, the higher the costs get up. I kind of fear that people aren't going to stick to the GOP ideals or understand them. Bureaucratic careers. Maybe that's what we should call ourselves, the bureaucrats. Anyway, continue this.
The board, this working group, internal working group, will draw from best practices and communicate those best practices to the operators, because the board does not have operational authority.
Will American citizens be monitored?
No.
That makes no sense. No, we're not going to be monitored. They're just going to magically know whenever somebody says something that they don't like. Does some sort of magical Mayorkas symbol go off in the sky and he just suddenly knows exactly who said what, where it came from? There has to be a monitoring of American citizens for him to know who is spreading the disinformation. It doesn't just happen out of the blue. Or what he considers disinformation, I should say. This is bullcrap.
Guarantee that.
Well, so what we do, we in the Department of...
No, this guy is lying.
Will American citizens be monitored?
No.
Guarantee that.
Well, so what we do, we in the Department of Homeland Security don't monitor American citizens.
You don't, but will this board change that?
No. The board does not have any operational authority or capability. What it will do is gather together best practices in addressing the threat of disinformation from foreign state adversaries, from the cartels, and disseminate those best practices to the operators that have been executing in addressing this threat for years.
Republicans are criticizing your...
Am I missing something? Is there a system in place that I don't know about that allows them to suddenly know when somebody says something bad or some sort of disinformation? Do they know whenever disinformation enters the country from an outside source? How do they know? Because they're monitoring the disinformation that is happening inside our country. How is it that they don't look into the dealings of private citizens, the messages that we send to each other on social media? It makes no sense. This guy, is there some sort of system in place that I don't know about? Is Mayorkas a wizard? Did he go to Hogwarts? What is going on here? It makes no sense. Somebody's got to tell us how, like, he keeps talking about these best practices. What are the best practices? Can he go into more detail about that, please? Because I feel like I should be wary of what these best practices are. There's no possible way that anything that he said there was truthful. And that was in itself a bunch of disinformation that he just gave you. He didn't answer the guarantee question. I noticed that too. You could be a bureaucrat with me, John. I'm hiring the Department of Debauchery. They'll probably consult with those 51 retired intelligence officials. It makes no sense. Who is overseeing this? A, who is overseeing this? B, what are these best practices they're talking about? C, what are the systems that are in place here that they're talking about? And D, how are they going to monitor messages, disinformation, quote unquote, inside the country if they're not monitoring the messages that are sent between citizens inside the country? These are the questions that I need answered. These are the questions that I don't see being asked. No matter how you strike it. Okay, and on top of that, here's another one. Here's another question. Let's say that you have disinformation being bandied about, quote unquote disinformation, by the way. Let's say you have it bandied about between users. What kind of practices are we talking about here in terms of squelching that from happening? Are you going to go after the private citizen, or are you going to go after the business that is allowing the private citizens to distribute that information? And if so, how is that not silencing free speech just with extra steps? So what are the consequences? Because there has to be action taken, right? There has to be action taken in order to stop it. What is the action that is being taken here, and who is it being taken against? This whole Ministry of Truth nonsense, it doesn't add up. This is 100% Orwellian. You know, this is there's no way around it. This is an attack on free speech. Plain and simple. 100%. Because these people are going to have to monitor us and curb us from talking to one another and spreading this, quote, disinformation. It's the only... Otherwise, what's the point of this existing in the first place? This whole Ministry of Truth. What's the point of it? This Disinformation Governance Board. What's the point of it? Mayorkas is not telling us the whole story. These people aren't telling us the whole story. Period. How and by what authority do they have to create such a board? Answer, none. Also a good question. How is it going, like, once Republicans get into office after the midterms, and I am 100% certain that we're going to have a pretty big sweep, if Republicans don't screw it up, which there's always a chance of that. If Republicans have any gumption whatsoever, if they are worth their weight at all, they will immediately disassemble any kind of disinformation governance board. They will begin passing laws that make it clear that there is no going the long way around when it comes to silencing the population, when it comes to silencing citizen, when it comes to interfering with their First Amendment rights. If they have any worth whatsoever, they will address this immediately. The moment that they are in office and have all the power, they will start passing left and right all of these laws that protect us from the government. And this should be a big deal. This is a big deal. 100% big deal. Because if they can take, it doesn't matter. Censorship is dangerous to a society, period. Dangerous. And it just seems to me that this is censorship. This is impeding on our First Amendment rights just with extra steps. That's all it is. That's all it is. Should not exist, period. There are already intelligent agencies that already monitor all the world's information. This is just for American citizens. It has to be. It has to be. Disinformation Governance Board? Governance? Are they trying to... It's in the name. They can't govern other countries. They have to govern us. Disbanding intrusion into privacy hinges on ending the Patriot Act. Dude, I think the Patriot Act should get tossed into the garbage and then that garbage burned. My concern with the GOP is that they'll do nothing but hold the line, which is something that I'm actually scared of too, Delacroix. I think it's very apparent that right now the GOP it has the high ground, Anakin. Okay? It's definitely got the advantage. But the GOP didn't get to that advantage all on its own. I don't feel like it really fought. With a few exceptions. DeSantis is a champion. An absolute champion. Greg Abbott, say what you will, he's done some pretty cool stuff too. But, we didn't get there because of our offensive capability. Republicans are kind of more of a, hey, don't move from this position. And Democrats, and we'll just react to whatever the Democrats do. They're not proactive, they're reactive. And that puts us at a massive disadvantage on the right for any American citizen who wants to protect their freedoms and their rights. Because the party that is supposed to do that waits for an attack to happen. They don't proactively go out and go, hey, we're going to stop them we're going to stop the Democrats, we're going to stop the left from intruding on free speech by passing certain laws. I've seen certain politicians try to pass stuff, but then nothing gets passed. Ted Cruz does it all the time. He'll try to pass laws that actually stop things from happening. And his bills just don't get passed. I think Rand Paul's tried to do it a few times. You have proactive members of the GOP, for sure. But at this moment in time, I feel like the GOP is strictly reactive. And it only comes out on top. It only gets an advantage whenever the Democrats screw up so badly that the people turn against them. But at some point in time, the Democrats are going to, because, the law of undulation is absolute. The Democrats are at some point in time going to be able to crawl back on top. Somehow. We can delay that from happening if the Republicans actually do things that weaken and cripple the Democrats' ability to lie people, to push their agendas and lies and their radicalism. I'm not saying the GOP needs to start censoring the left at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. But the left can easily push lies and narratives on people if we can't discuss it with one another. If they just start labeling stuff as misinformation and start silencing us via, whatever, they could go after anyone, be it Twitter or AT&T. And that's how they can push, these lies on us and stuff. It's scary to think about, but we have a Republican Party, who is for the most part not willing to take the fight to the Democrats. They are in their position, their winning position right now because the Democrats screwed up so badly. They pushed the Overton window to the left so quickly, and they attacked not just the people, but our children. They're trying to brainwash our children out in the open. They're openly talking about how they're minor attracted persons, MAPS. And they want to push sexuality on kids. They are responsible for inflation. They were responsible for the Afghanistan debacle. Like all this stuff, they screwed. The border is so open right now that it's almost like we don't even have one. They screwed up on all of this. And it is the primary reason why many people are... The Republicans hardly had to make a point. The Democrats made it for them, which I get it. It's cool. But at the same time, at some point in time, the Democrats are going to get out their act together. They're going to rally. They're going to find a good leader. And they're going to come back strong. The law of undulation is absolute. But Republicans need to stop just waiting for stuff to happen and start doing it themselves. Australia, Britain, and Canada deputies make $60,000 to $70,000 annually. Yeah, my brother is actually about to become a police officer, and I was shocked at how much money he didn't make. Australia, Britain, and Canada already monitor the USA's information, and the USA does the same for other countries. Forgot the name of the program. I believe it's called the CIA. The GOP needs to get on to dismantling large swaths of government and spending, but most of them have already seen a spending measure they haven't liked. 100% accurate. Elon Musk said something a while back. I think it was either earlier this year or last year, at the end of last year. He was talking about the Build Back Better program, and he was completely against it. And when they asked him why, he was like, well, because it's just more regulations on an economy that is already overburdened with regulations. And he said that once you put a regulation in place, it doesn't come out. It's there almost in perpetuity. The Patriot Act being another good example, Dennis. There are still laws on the books from like the 20s. They're completely outdated, but they're still on the books and we still abide by them. And chances are many of these laws have to go. They gotta go. Once you put a law in place, however, it becomes almost impossible to get it out. So the more regulations that we actually pass, the less free we are as a nation, the less free we are as builders of society. Mayorkas is unbelievable in that he believes his BS. That is unconstitutional, and he knows it all too well. Time to gather the tar and feathers. The problem is I'm not even sure that would help. He would just walk tarred and feathered into his office and start passing more laws. He wouldn't care. These people have no shame. Gates is pretty good. Rand Paul is one of my heroes, man. You want to talk about a dude who gets it. Republican Party is pretty inept. Yeah, 100%. The Bible. Oh, guys, thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and call it here. Alexa, stop. See, they're listening in. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me today. Awesome show, awesome conversation. Be sure to be back here again on Wednesday. We will pick back up. And be sure to like this stream if you haven't already. It really helps us out. And be sure to subscribe to the Red State YouTube channel if you haven't already. Go to redstate.com. Everything I talked about is on redstate.com right now and more. And if you would, please sign up for the VIP program. It really helps us out. You can use promo code MORSE, M-O-R-S-E, on sign up for a discount. Follow me at the Brandon Morse on Twitter, on the Musk platform. And I will see you guys. I will see you guys on Wednesday. In the meantime, tweet me if you have anything that you want me to talk about. I'll be happy to talk about it on stream. I love talking with you guys about whatever it is you're concerned about. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. Peace.